Hello, everyone. Welcome to the latest edition of the Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada Action Funds What's the Tea After Dark? This is a podcast where we talk about what's going on in Nevada, government, and with local Nevadans and pop culture. Now at the new West Las Vegas Library. I am Laura Martin. I'm the Executive Director of Plan Action and happy to be here today with our partner, Jizhoni from the Southern Nevada, I was about to say Southern Nevada chapter, the Southern Nevada organizer with the Native Voters Alliance of Nevada. And with elections coming soon, today we will talk about elections and issues facing the communities that we organize with. Welcome, Jizhoni. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you. Yat E. My name is Jizhoni Witherspoon. I go by she, her pronouns. I am from the Diné Nation, which is Navajo Nation, and I've been a Southern community organizer with NVAN for 3 years now.
Congrats.
At the end of this year, it will be my 4th year.
Ooh, a senior, your 4th year.
Ugh.
Cool. So we have to ask you a non-serious question, but what is your most controversial non-serious opinion?
I was thinking about this. I was like, I don't have any. But I guess the one I did come up with is that I don't believe pineapple belongs on pizza.
Ooh.
And it's very specific because it's the taste. Like, I'm a supporter of, like, weird things. But there's something about that taste that it does not mix right. So
That's so funny. I love pineapple. I was born in Honolulu. And I was a very sick little kid. And like the only thing I could eat without throwing up was pineapple. So I still love it to this day.
Pineapple on pizza?
Pineapple on anything. I grill pineapples.
See,
like on a grill.
No, that's a no for me.
You can have it on a chicken sandwich, on a burger.
I've eaten a lot of weird things, and pineapple on pizza is just my draw. Like, I'm just like, no, there's, especially like pineapple on ham.
Yeah,
I'm
not a big fan of pork anyway. But I do like pineapple, chicken, red onion, pizza.
Oh, pineapple though. I'll do the chicken and red onion, but pineapple is a no.
That's fair. We'll have to go out to pizza and we'll get what we like.
I know a great place.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So we are constantly hearing every election is the most important election of our lifetime. But what is at stake for Nevada's Native voters this election? And, what positive changes are possible?
Yeah. And I feel that question of this is the most important election is said every year, but every year it's made true because the political landscape is changing, it's shifting, the stakes are different, the tension shifts, and the environment changes as well. So it's made more true every year. And so with Indigenous peoples, what's at stake for them is kind of the same things as it always is: accessibility, safety, and trust. And especially with this year, with how the system is kind of making it harder for people to vote, not only non-natives, or not natives, but non-natives as well. And so with that as a barrier, as well as with Indigenous peoples, they are already at a distrust at, government-run systems with how there's so much history of how people, are mistreated, and the told lies. And so to tell our Indigenous peoples, hey, we know you've been crushed for like 7 generations now, but let's participate in this. And that's already like a barrier in itself. And I think even though if we get over these, hurdles with our communities, there's still something beautiful in the end with, the relational organizing that will be had with our communities to be able to talk with them and really reach them and focused on just more community building will be very great for our communities. And then as well as, there's one thing I was forgetting. That with all of these relational organizings that we're doing, we're seeing that people are becoming more curious. And with that curiosity, it will turn into confidence. And then with confidence, it turns into participation. So,
Yeah, I like that. Now, obviously, just like the Black community and the Latino community, we are not monolith, and neither is the Native community in Nevada. There's urban, there's rural. But do you feel like there are some shared issues that the Native community wants to hear candidates talk about in order to earn their vote?
yeah, I think it's not necessarily an issue, but it is a mentality of we want elected officials who are going to have a backbone when it comes to, developers or elected officials who are wanting to sell our public lands and our ancestral lands for profit. And we want elected officials who do what do what they say they're going to do, and not just campaign a certain way and then govern the other way. And that's where we want our elected officials, and as well as I think we want our elected officials to be able to make sure that Nevadans are still housed, that making things affordable like prescription drugs, making sure that our friends and our families are not being torn apart and worried about going to school for our kids, and making sure it's safe to go there, and that education is not further colonized.
Yes.
So
Yes, I hear that, definitely. So you talked a little bit about relational organizing. What are some other ways that you all plan to mobilize voters and especially kind of, build that bridge between rural and urban natives?
yeah, I think for like my experience in organizing with Indigenous peoples, I feel like there's always an activity that we come to gather at, and whether that be like beading or storytelling, or maybe like supporting Native creators with like they have films that they're creating, and or people got businesses. Like we found this Native florist here in Vegas, and so we had a making a bouquet class.
What's their name?
I believe their name is Flower Avenue.
Ooh, I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, so we have those types of events so that we're able to come together, have those conversations where we talk about like what's going on in the community and how we can take steps to help our community get civically engaged, and how we can help kind of bridge that gap between civically engaged and then moving on to like getting into relational organizing and building out the community so that we're able to kind of help bring people to the polls. But we use that same organizing tactic in rural areas as well, because when it comes to rural areas, it's much similar where we come together. But for example, in Fallon, Nevada, our Native communities were wanting a powwow in their community, like post-COVID, because they had one previously, and our northern organizer was able to help build that support, and we were able to help support, that project or that dream to come true. And so we had a powwow running for quite a couple of years, and it was like that's what the community wanted. And that helps, build more conversations on how, we were able to help with this. And so now we can also help with more things that other, our community members want.
I love that. So we also know that, Natives face some barriers when it comes to participating in elections. Some of it has to do with, proper ID, or for rural people, access to regular postal service. But what are some ways that voting rights have advanced for Indigenous communities here in Nevada?
Yeah, with, I guess with the biggest, barrier is always access.
Mm-hmm.
And not just physical access, but that. Sorry, I'm collecting my thoughts.
You're good.
Nevada has made real strides with, providing those access with, now every registered voter gets a mail-in ballot.
Mm-hmm.
And now with tribal nations, when they reach out and say they want a polling location within their tribal lands, they're able to get that polling location. And it wasn't just given to us, it was fought for, and it was advocated for, that we need those polling locations for tribal communities. But when it comes to more barriers that we can further seek, so I said that, the barriers isn't just with physical access, it's with the trust. And specifically, we have historic distrust of the federal government.
Good reason too.
Many reasons: boarding schools, assimilation. There's so many that I could keep going on. It's whole own topic, but there needs to be more effort with culturally grounded outreach, with reaching out to communities, as well as just meeting where the communities are, with kind of how they're feeling. And so, sorry.
No, you're doing great.
Sorry, I was like,
No, you're doing great.
I kind of got
cut out
lost.
the silent part.
Yeah.
Have you seen, you talked about your work in Fallon? Are tribes like that, are they actually taking advantage and requesting the polling location, or do you feel like there's still that trust gap?
I feel like, there definitely is that trust gap. Is the real barrier of what needs to overcome, or how we need to outreach to our tribal communities, because it really is if you talk to any tribal member, that is the first thing they'll come to you, and that they will say well, what are they gonna do for me? I'm in my own tribal community. I'm barely trying to manage and talk with my tribal leaders, and
That's real.
it's hard.
Yeah, it is hard. And I think it's also kind of frustrating too, because, Plan has done work with tribal communities before, and it almost feels like, obviously we have urban natives, but in the rural parts of the state, it almost feels like there's no democracy, because no matter, how much you have people at Thacker Pass advocating, or people who live in Elko or other mining towns or other just industry towns, it's almost like no matter what is said, the history proven. It's like people do whatever they want to make money.
Yes, the big conglomerates, the
Yeah.
businesses that are trying to make money. I just watched this documentary about our some Indigenous activists, the Dan sisters.
Oh,
I'm pretty sure
yes.
Plan has also put on
Yeah,
that.
I've been able to meet one of the sisters. Her other sister had passed away, but we've been
Yes,
out to their house.
yes, and that story specifically is just like you can see how like it's like the Dan sisters are degrading the land, and it's like, okay, you're building a mine like 10 miles away from here.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
sure.
It's crazy, and it's also really not a red or blue issue. It's a green issue. It's just about money.
Yes,
Yeah.
it really is.
Yeah. So kind of, stepping back from the election, but also kind of related because it is an issue that's important, that I hope a lot of our elected officials are paying attention to, and that's missing and murdered Indigenous people. I've also seen it called like missing and murdered Indigenous women, Indigenous girls, Two Spirit, but it's focused on violence against Indigenous people and the unique circumstances around kind of the cooperation between different law enforcement agencies and sovereign tribal nations. Can you tell us a little bit about your advocacy for the Missing and Murdered Indigenous People Alert?
Yeah. Our public affairs director has been working really hard on the missing and murdered Indigenous Peoples Alert, or MMIP Alert. But in 2027, we are working to pass this bill and sign it into law. But what MMIP Alert is basically an Amber Alert, but for Indigenous peoples that reside in Nevada or visiting. But it will act as an Amber Alert or a Silver Alert that basically sends out a notification within, a report to a law enforcement agency within 2 hours. And that, I feel like people will say like, well, why did Indigenous people need their own like alert, or like why do we have to give this whole alert to like a demographic or an age group? And the reality is missing Indigenous people go missing at disproportionate rates than for the size of the community.
Yeah.
And with that, not only when does our, Indigenous people seek out to, help, spread information, or are putting in that report to, hey, my missing person, my loved one that I cared for, are usually kind of dismissed, or, a search or report doesn't even go out because lots of different reasons.
Yeah.
And that is difficult for the community. And that, sorry. Yeah. So with our Indigenous peoples and Indigenous families, they usually go to Facebook or go to our social medias to send out that alert, and spread information about their loved ones. And usually that's not really a good resource to spread out information, because you don't know who it's going to, you don't know if it's going to the right people, the right area. So it's really hard on the communities, because then that urgency of that person going missing is not there anymore.
Yeah.
And so with this bill, it provides that urgency. It provides our family to be seen. It provides this the sense of urgency that is needed in our communities. That isn't, for a system, we have the Amber Alert. But if it isn't working for Indigenous peoples, then we have to create our own.
Yeah.
So that's kind of really important for this bill.
Yeah, definitely. What can people do to support your efforts? Because obviously, we're going to need to convince legislators, decision makers that this is the right path forward. So, how can we support you all?
Yes, our public affairs director has created a link, which is a Google form that basically is a list of supporters. So I hope the link will be provided.
It will.
Yes. Nice. And so this link will help show your support in getting this bill passed so that we're able to help, when it comes legislative time to use that and show these legislators that, not only Indigenous people care about it, but, our relatives, our families, our friends, our communities, we all care about it. So, yeah, that's where you can go to support.
Yes, definitely. We'll share that link and people should sign up to get involved with the campaign. We also have a flyer that people can share around to get more of your friends to sign up and support, because unfortunately it is going to be a heavy lift. Like I've been part of conversations with Indigenous women in our federal delegation years ago, even pre-pandemic, and it still feels like we're still asking for the same thing. So hopefully the legislature next year can get it done, and hopefully we can also elect champions. Like we know Shea Bacchus is running for re-election. I know Brian Wadsworth, who's a member of the Paiute tribe up north, is running. So it's also good to see representation, so we don't have to keep, begging people to understand us. It's just
our champions.
It's just our champions are there. So this has been a good conversation. I appreciate you coming in. I really do. This is the new West Las Vegas Podcast Center, which is free to use. If you want to do your own podcast one day, we can talk about tattoos.
Yes, we can talk about tattoos outside of podcasting,
Yes.
But yeah.
But thank you all to everyone who's listening. Thank you for tuning in. We'll make sure you have links to NVAN so you can follow them on social media, but also make sure you're following Plan Action at Plan Action NV. There are 2 N's because someone's holding our other username hostage. And keep a lookout for our next episode. Thank you all very much for listening to What's the Tea?